When I realized that I don't have to compare myself with bigger bloggers and I can just run my own race, it was a huge relief off my shoulders. And the other thing too, I think, is bloggers, there's just a never-ending list of things to do, from your social media, to your recipe writing, recipe testing, even fixing up old posts. It just never ends. And I think once I took that pressure off to have to do everything, it just gave me a little bit more freedom and brought that joy back into why I do this.
That was Jessica Holmes, and this is episode number 169 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. I am your host, and this is the Chopped Podcast. This is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. Food blogging has evolved over the years to a very technical, also very artistic, and it's a relatively demanding career path. Many go into it with a passion to share food and recipes, and they think of it as a path, as something to help them achieve their passions. But as the industry has evolved, I think so too have the demands of the individuals involved with it. This podcast is about helping you navigate those demands, helping you decide what works for you, what doesn't work, and also just to help you kind of maintain that passion, keeping it front and center all along. Before we get started, I want to share with you the review of the week. This one is from Caroline at Umami Girl, and she says, I've been food blogging since 2008 and still find a tremendous amount to learn from this podcast. Plus, it's just fun to listen to, and it has introduced me to new to me blogs that I now love. Good stuff. Thanks, Carolyn. I'm so glad that you're finding value from this podcast. And I love your point about finding new blogs to follow. There are so many wonderful people out there, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of work to find them. And I'm so glad that this show can be a resource for you and for others. And just, finding some of these interesting bloggers who are out there and the things that they're doing, I find so intriguing as well. If you would like to be a featured listener in a future episode, just leave a review of the Chopped Podcast on iTunes. I would love to be reading your name next time. So on to today's topic. Today I'm talking with Jessica Holmes. She's of the site The Sweetest Menu. Jessica has been blogging for 5 years now, and she talks about the challenges of remaining passionate about her blog while also working a full-time job. Actually, I love Jessica's perspective on this because her full-time job actually feeds her knowledge about social media and online communications. I think there's definitely benefits to having both a career as a food blogger and working for another company. And I talked to Zainab Storms about this in episode number 151, where she describes how, she feels motivated to be out and using the skills she trained for in college and talking with people about other things besides food. That is an actual possibility, or food blogging at least. So I think there's ways to make this work, and I love how both of them have shared what has worked for them. And Jessica's talking about that today, how she's been able to make a full-time job and her passion as a food blogger work. And Jessica also talks about her Instagram because her account is so beautiful. If you haven't checked it out, I really encourage you to go there today. Her photographs just pop off the page. And I love her story about how that started, just, what they say that necessity is the mother of invention. And so I love how Jessica talks about, the creative approach that she went to create her kind of unique style on Instagram. It's another inspiring conversation, and I'm so excited to share it with you. So let's get straight to it. Here's today's featured discussion with Jessica Holmes. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Jessica Holmes. She's of the site Sweetest Menu, and she's on the show today. Hey Jessica, welcome to the Chopped Podcast.
Hi Marley, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you on the show. I'm really looking forward to our discussion. I think it's going to be a great one.
Of course it is.
Yeah. So I see that you've been blogging now. Is it 4 years?
It's 5 years next month, actually.
5 years.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Pretty exciting.
Thank you.
Can you describe for everybody why you decided to start your blog?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was about 5 years ago. I was actually working full time and studying graphic design part time. I was just doing some night classes. And it was coming to the end of my study. And I just thought, well, what am I going to do now? I really loved baking. I followed a lot of food blogs. And I just thought, I wanted something. To fulfill my creative side, a creative outlet. And so I thought, well, why not start a food blog? So it was very humble beginnings, wasn't trying to start a business or monetize it in any way, just simply really just doing something for myself, and just made sense to combine my love of digital and content and food.
You got the bug then, huh?
Yeah,
After
yeah,
that.
that's right. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Let's put it that way.
I know that. I think a lot of people get into food blogging because they see the fun side of it, but
Yes.
there's a lot of behind the scenes work that, it's not, but by the time you figure that out, it's too late. You're hooked.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely my story.
Yeah. So you just had this lifelong love of baking?
Well, it's interesting. I had a lifelong love of food, but actually, growing up, I never really got in the kitchen. I never really did much baking. If we were doing anything special, my mum and I might have gotten a cake mix, like a box mix from the supermarket,
Yes.
but I rarely baked anything from scratch. And then I actually got married and realized I couldn't cook anything. And I love
Yeah.
food, but I just had a mum who just, really cared for me, and just hadn't really explored that in my life. And so then I realized quick smart that I needed to start learning how to cook and bake. I've obviously got a really big sweet tooth. And and yeah, it just kind of spiraled from there. And as I learned how to cook and I learned how to bake, and then I saw the enjoyment that it brought to other people, when they tried a cake that I made or a dish that I made, um, it just was the best thing ever. So it
Ah,
just
yeah.
really like spurred that interest to keep cooking and keep baking and keep learning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
love that. And
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just
I
going to
love
say,
the,
but I'm a late bloomer. Like, I've only been in the kitchen in the last few years. So
oh, yes. But I think that that's kind of nice though, because I think you bring a lot of different perspectives into the kitchen that way, you know?
yeah, that's true. It is true.
Like if you come into it with these preconceived notions, yeah, you're kind of learning it fresh and being able to share it that way, I think is nice.
Yeah, that's right. And I think I really appreciate it because I really
Yeah.
needed to learn. Like I was a bit desperate, when your husband
Yes.
and you need to cook a meal and you can't cook anything. It's you need to learn quick smart. So that's why Jamie Oliver became my best friend, actually. Um, and
Yeah.
on that, actually, that was one thing that made me really appreciate recipes and recipe writing was when I was quite a novice in the kitchen, and I would make, say, a Jamie Oliver recipe and it would work. It just meant so much to me because I knew I wasn't
Yes.
very good, yet, that I was still learning. But when a recipe worked, it just brought such joy to me and then obviously to whoever was sharing it with me. So I became, big fans of these amazing recipe writers. Um,
That's a really good point because I don't think it's something we talk about a lot, and
yeah,
that is the science or the art, the combination of the two of actually writing the recipes.
yeah, absolutely. And I
It's
mean,
not
it's
easy.
not easy. No, it's
No.
not.
'Cause sometimes you're taking these kind of complicated processes and you have to try to write it in a way that doesn't confuse people or I don't know, it's
Exactly.
not easy. Yeah.
And you can't assume too much knowledge. A lot of recipes
Yes.
assume, yeah, knowledge, but
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
I found from my perspective, like I like being creative in the kitchen, but there's a
yes,
lot of people who do not want, they want the exact thing. So I had to learn
yes.
to be more exact.
Yes, exactly. No, that's right. And being very specific. And when you start a food blog and people start asking questions when you write a recipe, and you thought it was quite clear, and then
Yeah.
they're asking these recipes that you're like, oh, wouldn't you assume to do that, or don't you know how to do that? And you realize, no, you really have to sometimes go back to basics. And it kind of takes me back to where I was, and
Yeah.
remembering what it is like when you're first starting.
Well, and I think, some of the trouble too as a food blogger is troubleshooting. When somebody has a problem,
Yeah.
being able to walk them through that is not always easy.
No, no, that's probably actually my least favorite thing.
I think I'm right there with you, Jessica.
Yeah.
Because, I first of all, I'm not in their kitchen and sometimes they'll say they follow the recipe exactly. And then, you chat with them for a little bit and you realize, they changed the amount of sugar used or whatever.
Yes.
It's not
Yes.
easy.
No, no, it's
No.
not. You really wish you could just be a fly on the wall, in the kitchen, but you
Right.
can't. Yeah.
Yeah. But your perspective is really interesting because I noticed on your site that you're from Australia, but you do you have a fascination with American sweets, it seems like.
Yes, yes. Um, yeah, so I'm from Australia. I've born here, lived here my whole life. But yeah, basically back when I went on that cooking journey, I took a trip to the US. And I was just so taken with all your amazing food, especially your desserts, the creativity. I mean, things like red velvet cake, New York cheesecake, anything s'mores, anything peanut butter. I mean, a lot of that we don't really have on that scale in Australia.
Hmm.
So I was introduced to all these amazing flavors, and I just felt like a lot of your baking and desserts were so creative that it just really inspired me, and that's sort of the theme that I ended up taking for the blog from then on.
And do you think the major part of your audience is from Australia?
No, they're from America.
Ah.
And you know what's funny about that is I actually thought when I started it, I thought, well, maybe there'll be other Australians and they'll be really interested in,
Yeah,
this American, it's a little bit
right.
different style of baking. And, but it seems that the Americans like the American cooking and
That's true.
baking. So, but either or, I'm happy whoever wants to come to the site.
Well,
So,
I'm curious because I imagine you have a little bit of a conundrum because Australia is on the metric system, right?
yes, yes.
So do you do your recipes, by measurements, or do you
I
or,
do
or do you do
I
cups?
do both. Yeah,
Ah, smart.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Because yeah, that's right. We're very used to like the more UK British way of cooking, which is everything in grams,
Yes.
measuring pretty much everything. So I try and convert to cups as well, but I do generally do my baking in.
Well, I'll be honest, having
Yeah,
grown up my whole life this way, it's like, I mean, I only used measuring cups. And
yeah,
once you kind of start to understand the differences in ways people can measure flour, it can
yeah.
kind of freak you out,
Yes,
you know?
right. It's no
I
wonder
mean,
people get different results, right?
yes, exactly. Whereas I
Yeah.
can see if it's measured, there's no room for error.
Exactly. So that's why I prefer it for a lot of baking recipes. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, I mean, other people, yeah, they still ask me for cup measurements. So yeah, I just put in both now. But no,
That's a really smart way to do it. Actually, my recipe card has the opportunity to do both, and I just haven't figured it out. I got to get in there and just make that
yeah,
happen.
it's a little more time consuming, but you get used to it for sure.
Yeah. So do you just kind of have a formula that when it's so many grams of flour, you convert that to 2 cups, or is that how you do that?
Yeah, 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 that is. So when I first started, I kind of measured out the core ingredients, your sugars, your flours,
Yeah.
all that kind of thing, and just kind of wrote it down, how many grams is a cup of peanut butter, even, things like
Yes.
that. And then so then I know whenever I'm writing recipe, I kind of like, now I have it memorized, like those key ingredients, and then whatever else I'm putting in, I just weigh at the time and write it down.
That
So
sounds
yeah,
good. And
yeah.
you work a full-time job too, right?
I do, yes.
So
I
that's going to be tricky how to manage your time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been a journey.
Uh-huh.
And I've definitely gotten better over the years, but it can be quite difficult, balancing blogging and working full time. But it can be done for sure, definitely.
What are some of your favorite tips for how to manage both?
Yeah. For me, what really helped was establishing a routine.
Mm.
So for a while, I kind of just did my own thing and kind of just wandered back and forth between days and nights and mornings and evenings, and doing one recipe a week, two recipes a week. I didn't
Yes.
really have a set routine. And once I worked that out and how much time I was willing to sacrifice, I think that helps a lot. So for example, for me, I do a couple of nights a week. After work, which I'm available to do things like writing a post, scheduling social media, things like that. Um, and then I shoot in natural light. So this is one of the main areas that's a little difficult because Monday to
Yes.
Friday is not available to me. So I have to shoot on a Saturday. So for me, like the main sacrifice is sort of like that Saturday morning, like from probably like 8 till 2 is kind of my baking, shooting, like go hour, if that makes sense. Like,
Yes,
um,
it does.
yeah. So for me, that just means, when I'm doing things with friends or with my husband, that time is just a no-go zone. And I just figure out a way around that. And, not everyone would want to sacrifice maybe that amount of time, but that works really well for me. So yeah, establishing a routine. And the other thing that really helps is just realizing that you can't do everything and that that's okay. Um,
Yes.
I think one of the biggest things when you're working full time is you see a lot of other bloggers who perhaps are blogging full time, kind of speed ahead of you, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
They might have a little bit more time during their week, so you see them progressing, and you feel like you're so much slower. And I think when I realized that I don't have to compare myself with bigger bloggers and I can just run my own race, it was a huge relief, off my shoulders. And the other thing too, I think, is bloggers, there's just a never ending list of things to do, from
Mhm.
your social media, to your recipe writing, recipe testing, even fixing up old posts. It just never ends. And I think once I took that pressure off to have to do everything, um, it just gave me a little bit more freedom and brought that joy back into why I do this, if that makes
I
sense.
love that because I definitely am feeling that myself. Like, there's this pressure to, optimize your email list and
Yeah.
have all these different opt-ins on your site. And then there's funnels, which, those are, it's like, come on,
Yeah.
how many more things can we do?
Exactly. And when you realize you're really doing the job of a lot of people, like,
Yes.
even at
Yeah.
my own work, there's tons of different people working on the one site doing all these different things. And you're just a one man show. And,
Yes.
um, and for me, that was like, taking some of the pressure off the social media side of things. Um, so, so just as a practical example, I just kind of looked at social media and realized what channels are really driving traffic for me. And for me, that's Pinterest and Instagram. And then that's where I focus my energy. And I do a little bit on Facebook. I do hardly anything on Twitter, and I'm okay with that. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yes,
I would love
exactly.
to do more, but I don't have the time, and that's okay.
Right, but do you have any tools that you use to help? Like,
I do,
a lot of people
yeah.
use Tailwind or CoSchedule, things like that?
I do. I use Tailwind for Pinterest, and I will admit that was a bit of a game changer for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, just really helping schedule that, way out, which takes something off your mind.
Mhm.
Um, Otherwise, Instagram I do, all manually, and Facebook I do manually as well.
I see what you're saying. You don't have a tool that
No,
helps
I
you
don't
with
have a tool.
Instagram?
No, no.
Really?
Yeah, I just do it all by hand.
So you do it from your phone?
Yeah, yeah. So I usually just post every morning and maybe occasionally in the evening. So it only takes 5 minutes to put something up.
Yes.
Yeah.
I only sound surprised because I feel like, like some of these scheduling tools will let you write in a way that's a little bit more creative than your phone will on Instagram.
Oh.
Like for example, even just having returns. Are you able to like do a
Oh,
return with
right.
your phone?
No, I can't. I
Okay.
do that sneaky full stop. Do you know you press
What is that
enter?
sneaky full stop? What is that?
You just press enter and then you put a full stop and then you press like enter again. And it kind of
And that gives you a return?
yeah, but it's not. It's just a full stop on that line, if that makes sense. But
Ah, yes, I got
yeah,
you.
yeah,
So
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's just some things like that. But other than that, I guess the nice thing about, like sometimes when you're using a scheduling software and it's like, boom, it comes up and you weren't really ready for it. It's like it's kind of
Yeah.
nice to be in control.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but
Yeah.
I think for Instagram, my hesitation. Well, I don't really feel like I need it. It's not like Pinterest where you might be pinning like 20 pins a day and it gets a bit
Yes.
out of
Yeah.
hand. Um, but the other thing I was just a bit worried about with Instagram is I didn't know if you'd get penalized or anything. I know that
Yeah.
I know that you probably don't, but I don't trust Facebook sometimes. And I just thought, oh, well, I've got a good thing going. So, I'll just
Right.
leave it at
Oh,
that.
obviously you're doing quite well on Instagram. And if anybody hasn't already, I encourage you to go check out Jessica's page. I just love your feed. And I can always tell when it's your photos that pop up on Instagram. It's like, oh, yep, that's the sweetest menu because your
Oh,
style
thank
is just
you.
so distinct.
Thank you. I've tried to develop it over time, but it's not easy. I'll give you that.
No.
No.
But how did you come up with that style? I'm just curious because like to me, when I look at your photography on Instagram, it seems like the food is just jumping off the page
Oh,
or off the
thank
screen.
you. Thank you. That's what I'm going for. But
Well, you're getting it. That's good.
um, is I tell you what, food photography has been. It's actually one of the things that I love the most about blogging, but it's definitely probably the thing I've struggled with the most.
Yeah.
When I started, I'd never picked up like a proper camera. I didn't know anything. And you can tell if you go back in my posts, please don't go back in my posts, but you will find some really ugly photos. But it's funny, I've just always really been drawn to that kind of macro style photography where the food is really the hero. And it kind of
Yes.
started by accident, to be honest, because when I first started blogging, I didn't have much money to spend on blogging things. So
Props and things.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So my photography was really bare because I just didn't have a whole stack of napkins or, spoons and things. So I just photographed the food. And then, as time went on, I kind of realized, oh, this is actually the style that I like, with minimal props. So it's kind of worked in my favor and probably saved me a bit of money over the years.
That's true. You don't have all these props to store either.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then you also, you get creative with these colorful backgrounds. They look
Yeah.
pretty simple, but they just add such a pop of color to your feed. It's nice.
Thank you. That's actually only new. I only just started using them probably in the last 6 months. So that's just
Are
been
you
a bit
happy
of
with it?
fun. I am, because I was just shooting on white
Yeah.
and I'm quite a colorful person. So bringing that color in has just, yeah, it's just probably a better reflection of me and what I want my site to look like. So yeah,
Yes.
it's been really nice.
I like it. And is that one thing that if you had to choose one thing that you would credit with, the success of your Instagram, what would it be?
Um, Look, I think I don't want to take a whole lot of credit because I do think there is a lot of luck when it comes to these sort of things.
Yes.
Like it's not necessarily the person with the best photos has the most followers. You know what I mean? I
Yes, I
follow a lot
agree.
of bloggers who have the most stunning photos and
I agree.
have less followers. But I don't know why. I've had a bit of growth. I think some things that I try to do is just post very consistently. So, like I said, I post every morning. I don't really miss a day. Um, so I don't know if that's helped over time, just being very consistent with the time that you post and how often you post, and then obviously just trying to keep in your style and your branding, so your page has a nice flow. And I don't know, people like
Well,
desserts though. I mean, come
I was
on,
going to say,
like,
yeah, desserts probably
yeah.
helps too.
It does help. I mean, people say to me, they ask me sometimes, and I'm like, come on, people like cake. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, if I was posting a vegetable, I wouldn't have the same growth. And for example, I posted a fruit smoothie the other day that I did. I rarely do healthy recipes on my blog,
Yeah.
but I did a fruit smoothie because I recently got a NutriBullet and have really been into the smoothies. And nobody liked that photo. Like,
Oh,
that was like my worst performing photo, maybe like ever. And I'm just like, you know what? The people come here to see decadent desserts. So it teaches me a lesson. So
right. I mean, there are some sites that probably do nothing but smoothies and they do really well, but it's what
absolutely.
their brand is about.
And who their audience is, and my audience obviously comes to me for sweets. So that's what I've cultivated. I didn't realize. I thought people would be, more excited about a smoothie, but.
I'm curious about time of year. Do you find that, like at the beginning of the year when the health craze is going crazy, are you still going strong or do you have to, do you worry about that?
There's definitely a January drop off, 100%. Yes, every year. Um, yeah. I'm still kind of
But you
working
make up
out.
for it.
I'm still
Yeah.
working out how to manage that, because then sometimes I think, oh, well, I'll do a few healthier baking recipes, but then nobody seems to really like them. Um, so yeah, I'm trying to balance. I don't know if my audience is the whole 30 kind of New Year's resolution kind of audience. I think they just kind
Yeah.
of I don't know.
Here's my question to you though. When you say that your traffic or not traffic, like we're talking about Instagram here, but maybe the engagement that you have on Instagram drops off, let's say in a month like January.
Mm.
But if you were to post healthier things, they don't do as well. I'm just curious if what's not doing as well is better than the drop off. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's not.
Okay, got you. So
Yeah.
you would rather stick with your desserts because even the drop off is better than when you post
Yes.
something that's healthier. I got
Yes,
you.
correct. Correct. Yeah.
I always feel like people talk about knowing your audience, and I always wonder what that means. So that's why I love having conversations like this. It kind of helps people break down what does it mean to know your audience.
Yes, absolutely. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, and who knows? There may be a time in your life where you're sick of desserts, but if that doesn't happen, that's fine too, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And as long as they don't unfollow you, maybe they just don't want to like your pictures for a while, and then they'll come back round. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see.
I feel so torn on the subject of sugar because I feel like there's been so many studies that came out that talk about how bad it is for you. And I have a lot of sweets on my site, and I'm because I'm vegan. I'm in this world of like people expect
Mm.
healthy,
Mm.
and I have had to really I struggle with this a lot, and I just keep coming back to this spot like. Monday through Friday, I try to be healthier. And then on the weekends,
Yeah.
I'm going to have a donut. I'm going to have a
Yeah.
cookie. And so I think you got to have some balance in your life.
Absolutely. I think that's the conclusion I've come to as well. All things in moderation, Marley. So,
Yes, moderation is the key. Don't
yeah, that's
and
it.
actually I'm so proud of myself because I coexist with Oreos now, and that's something I could never do before.
That's
I can
so
have Oreos.
good.
Yeah, I can have Oreos downstairs and I would eat a whole row of them, but I don't
Yeah,
anymore.
that's
So I'm impressed with
great.
myself. Thank
That's
you very
actually,
much.
yeah, I've definitely had to learn the art of self control.
Yes.
Yeah, when you're testing, yeah, a lot of cake recipes and things like that, it gets a bit tricky. And, then I go to work and there's a birthday party, and there's a birthday cake, and everyone goes, oh, you're the cake girl. Why aren't you having any? And I'm like, I just tested cupcakes last night and I've got to test a chocolate cake tonight. Like, I have to have some kind of balance in there. But yeah, it's hard for people to know what life as a dessert blogger is actually like.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like you're going back to your blog and
Mm.
this schedule that you were on. It sounds to me like you do a lot of batch work. Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, I do. I probably do. I set aside maybe one or two nights a week that I kind of focus on recipe testing. Um, and then on the weekend, like I said before, yeah, that'll be when I'll be cooking and photographing. Yeah, so I kind of group it, try and work in advance a little bit, but doesn't always work out because there's a lot of failure in recipe testing. They don't tell you that.
Oh, yes, exactly. I'm just curious how that feels to you because I do the same thing. I love to batch work. And in fact, I've talked about it on this podcast before that oftentimes what I try to do is actually batch the whole month's worth of
Oh,
content at a time.
wow.
Yeah. But what I find though is sometimes it's like I have to reintroduce myself to that because I haven't shot done a photograph in a month.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I got to get back into that again. And it feels like cumbersome at times, but I just,
Yeah.
it is probably the most efficient way to work.
Well, I don't know if I could do a whole month. That's pretty impressive, Marley. But I think,
Uh,
yeah, I think mine's probably just like maybe I'll be working on two to three or two to four maybe recipes at a time, sort of thing.
See,
Much
I
more
can see the
manageable.
advantage of that. There's some
Yeah.
pros and cons to both, I think, perspectives, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess for me, I felt like if I could get, kick out a month's worth of content, then I've got that whole month to do these other things that I want to do. But of course,
Yeah.
the blog posts have to be, I mean, it all takes so much time. So
It really does, doesn't it? It really
yes,
does.
even when you think you can sit back and relax, there's no, none of
No.
that in this job.
No, that's right.
Mm.
That's right.
And I'm curious about some things that you may be doing differently this year. I know that you had an SEO audit. So I'm curious when you're developing your content, is that something that is different now because maybe you're doing keyword research as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I learning about SEO has been quite the journey. But I think at the moment I'm understanding more about how Google is really interested in content that is created for the reader. And I think for
Hmm.
me, that was quite a mind shift, I would say, because when I first started, obviously you think you're always writing for your audience and things like that. But when it was a creative outlet for me, I didn't monetize my blog or anything for the first 18 months. So I was just writing for me. I was
Yeah.
doing whatever recipe I wanted to do. Whenever I wanted to do it. And so now I'm really starting to understand, like you said, keyword research. What are people actually looking for? When are people looking for that recipe? And then even things like crafting the blog post so it's easy to understand, so people who haven't made this recipe can understand it. When I'm writing out the steps, are they clear and concise? Am I not waffling on too much in the blog post but keeping it easy to read? And then obviously trying to follow all the SEO rules, like putting in your alt tags and filling out your recipe card and things like that. But yeah, it's probably that main thing is that real mind shift to creating user first kind of content, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, my idea of keyword research before my SEO audit was that I would look to see, I would just search for it. Like if I was making, I don't know, something weird like chocolate chip cookies with pine nuts or something strange, because I thought it was cool to be unique. And so I would search for that and I would see that there were a million people, a million hits
Yeah,
results. That's what
right.
my idea of keyword research was. And so I would be tickled pink when I would land on the number one spot. I'm like, that's not hard at all. It's easy to get the number one spot.
Yes.
But then
Yes.
I found out that when you go for those more competitive terms, it's a different story.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And that's another thing that I'm kind of paying the price for is when I first started, I didn't really think about SEO at all. And like you, I love to create unique recipes, but I was probably like the recipe itself probably wasn't too unique, but my titles, like I would make a
Oh,
brownie and I'd
yes.
be like chocolate covered peanut butter praline brownie. And it's like, oh, Jess,
Yeah.
nobody's searching
Mm.
for that. So
Or I would say
I have
instead
a
of
lot of
lemon bars, I
followers.
would say luscious lemon bars or
Yes.
and or something that I was just trying to be different.
Yes, exactly. My website, unfortunately, is full of those kind of recipes. So yeah, I've learnt my lesson now. I'm trying to keep it a bit more short and sweet, and using my words in the description rather than the title.
Yes, and it kind of makes sense. You're just delivering to people what they're asking for.
Yes,
That's,
exactly. Exactly. And
yeah. And so
it
how
does make sense, but it takes a while for that penny to drop. Like I tell you, like it took so long for me. I don't know
Me
why.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a saying here in the United States that the United States will always do the right thing after they've exhausted every other option. So I think that that's how I feel sometimes too. It's like
Yes.
I will get there, but I'm gonna have to, go through all these other iterations first. And
Yes. Take the long road, unfortunately. So
yes, exactly. But I guess it makes it a creative journey that way, right?
exactly, exactly. And I do, I love looking back actually and seeing how far I've come. Um,
Yes.
I just try not to count the years of how long it actually took me to get there.
Right. I
But
think
yeah,
that's like you were saying before, not to compare yourself to other people.
exactly.
I know I've mentioned this before in this podcast, so everybody, I'm sorry to be reiterating myself here, but I love this quote from Lady Gaga because she was being interviewed by Stephen Colbert, and he was asking her, do you ever look back on a song and wish you would have done something differently? Like, it's recorded now, but you wish
Mm,
you would have and her response was, no, I give my all when I'm doing it, and I'm not going to second guess myself now because
yeah.
that's I have to respect who I was then.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you can't, you look back now with all the knowledge or skills that you've
Yeah,
developed. Yeah, but you didn't have that then. So,
right. You
you
did the
know,
best you could then.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's cool that you were being creative with the name of your brownies, but now you can go back in and change all that. So that have you been spending a lot of time going back into old content and kind of fixing
I
it?
have, yeah, I have. Especially reshooting a lot of the old photos and um, also just filling out. I was very short back in the day, just filling out a bit more of the content.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. So definitely, and reposting some old posts. Yeah,
Yeah, me too. I've definitely been going back and there was a
yeah.
time when I was you're talking about um, the the image descriptions, the alt text, and
Yes,
I
yes.
I was using that for Pinterest purposes, and so I had
Same. Yeah,
yes,
yeah. So
I
I had to
definitely had
go
to go
up.
back and fix that.
Yes, yes. Me too. Me too. Oh, it's
Yes.
painful. Yes.
Definitely. Has there been any old content that you have thought that, maybe I don't want to keep this around anymore. Have you deleted anything?
Um, probably only like a couple of posts that were just terrible from
Yeah.
from back in the day. Yeah, but most of it I just try to jazz it back up, even though I know it may not get a lot of traffic. I like to be proud of the posts on my site, so I'm just trying to
Yeah.
get rid of, yeah, just slowly over time, just update the old content so I can be really proud of what I've created, which is really hard
Yeah.
as a creative person because I don't know, you're hard on yourself, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I do think I understand what you're saying. There is this desire. I mean, I kind of push against this myself sometimes. Like, you want the story of that post to be unique and different, but at the same time, it seems like the trend right now is that you should pretty much stick to the recipe, except,
Yes,
maybe a paragraph at the top that's explaining your passion for this recipe or your some story you have related to it. But, after
right.
that, it's really about the reader from that point forward.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yes.
It is actually a bit of a struggle. I feel sometimes like um, kind of whether your blog is more like a function or whether it's a personal thing. Like how
Yes.
much do you balance? And I see a lot of other bloggers, and some of them, share such intimate details of their life so
Yeah.
beautifully, and that's something I've always found really hard because. Well, sometimes I just feel like I have nothing to say, but but
You
other
live in
times
Australia. You have a lot to say.
about the kangaroos and the koalas. Um,
Right.
um, but yeah, it's sometimes it's hard because who are you really talking to? You get that I get a bit shy, I think. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think I have that same situation, to be completely honest, because I think, I don't know that I have that much interesting going on, but I think
Yes.
if you think about, the people who may be following you, they probably are very interested in learning more about you. It's just kind of getting past that hurdle. I started doing
Exactly.
this. I think it was Sarah Cook who was on the site that mentioned that she does kind of a weekly post about what's going on in her life, and maybe some of the food that she's eating, and she might link to some of the recipes that she's, like a meal plan kind of thing. And
Ah.
I did start doing that. I didn't keep up with it, but I definitely hope to get back into that this year.
Yeah, that's nice. I love it when bloggers do that sort of thing. And this is the thing that I'm trying to learn how to do that more in my life, or in my blog, because I love seeing it in other people's blogs. I mean, I follow
Yes.
so many people's blogs and I feel like they're my friends and I know so much about them. But yeah, that's definitely something that I need to learn how to do. Even
Well, I was
5
going to
years
ask you,
in, see?
do you look into the future, and do you think about, like, okay, here's how I have been doing things. What are some things that you might think you'd want to do in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always trying to get better. For me, this year, I'm trying to focus on my photography, and getting a little bit better at that. And then, obviously, as well, I think just always trying to grow your skills in the kitchen. So
Yeah.
one thing I find with blogging is so often I'm creating recipes for myself and for the blog that you kind of lose the time and the opportunity to create just for no reason, and to use other people's recipes. And I think that's really important because you're following other people's recipes, you get inspired by the different flavors and how they do things and how the recipe's written. um, so one thing this year I just want to make sure that I'm doing is, I have a stack of beautiful cookbooks that I hardly ever cook from, especially like desserts. So I want to get back into baking and learning how to, bake different things that will eventually filter into my blog, those skills or different
Yes.
flavors and things, but it's not for my blog, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense.
Yeah. So, and that's one thing I love is to bake. But when baking becomes work, it's different. So I want to bring
Yes.
that back in my life.
I think that's so important to allow yourself some time to be in the kitchen, not for your blog.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's really important, and I think it makes sure you're growing and you're learning, but you're also just having fun and remembering why you love this in the first place. So,
Yeah, that is just, I think that's, an inspirational reminder of, I don't know, for everybody that, no matter what you're doing, to try to find the passion that you had for it at the beginning.
yes. Absolutely. Remember your why. I think that's really important.
Yes.
And for me, that comes when someone makes one of my recipes and tags me on Instagram or sends me an email and says, oh, I made this cake for my son's birthday or something like that. I mean, that right there is why I do this. That moment, getting to share my recipe, they got to make it, their family got to enjoy it, getting a glimpse into their life, it's really special. And I think of all the recipes in the world that someone chose mine, I mean, that just means everything to me.
Oh, that's lovely. And it
Yeah,
inspires you to keep going.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So do you have this vision that, you're going to continue on with this, and hopefully, take this might be your full-time job someday?
Um, it's interesting. I don't know, because I really enjoy my full time
Yes.
job and working full time. And I often feel quite torn between the two because
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
each give me something different. I think my main hurdle with making my blog full time, obviously, if it took off and became this amazing thing, that would be awesome. But I actually don't like working from home. um,
Interesting. Yes.
yeah, so that's always been one thing where I'm not an extrovert, I'm an introvert, but I've realized that just being home alone all day, if I was
Yeah.
doing that for days in a row, I would find that very difficult. Um, so I'm not sure. So maybe eventually it might be like a part-time thing, but
Yeah.
I do think, yeah, there'd have to be some kind of balance in my world.
I definitely feel what you're talking about because I am right on the line between introvert and extrovert.
Mm,
And I do find that days that I get out for whatever reason, it may be, to meet somebody at a coffee shop for a few minutes even. And
yeah.
those days I'm a lot more energized. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing where I'm like, oh, full-time blogging might be fun, but then I'm like, oh, just not I'm not 100% sure. So I'm just kind of doing both while I have the opportunity to do both and enjoying both for their different reasons, if that makes
Uh,
sense.
I love that. And I can imagine
Yeah.
too that the work that you're doing is somewhat related so that it could feel like what you're doing with the blog and what you're doing
Yeah.
with your job kind of contribute to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work in digital content. So I'm a
Yeah.
copywriter. Um, yeah, absolutely. And they definitely feed back in. There's been things I've learnt from my job that I've been able to bring to my blog, and vice versa as well. So I'm lucky that way, I think. Um, but also because it's funny too, because the job I had before the job that I currently have, I was actually working for a food magazine
Wow.
here in Australia. Yeah, and it was a fantastic job. I was working on their website, and I also got to go to their studio and see them creating these amazing recipes for their magazine, and how they did their recipe testing and did their photography. But it's funny, like I thought that was my dream. So I thought, like doing the
Yeah.
blog and then being able to do that kind of Monday to Friday as well would just be like, amazing, which I actually really enjoyed it. Um, but I found that it took a lot of my creativity. So I was talking about food all day and coming up with recipe
Yeah.
ideas for them and, writing about food and things like that. And then to come home and to create another recipe and to write more about food, I
Yes.
was like, I have nothing left to say. Um,
Food, food, food,
so
food.
exactly. It was like, I don't want to see another piece of cake. Um, so yeah, so it's interesting. So I'm kind of in that sweet spot at the moment where I have a different job and I kind of work in technology. So it's quite different to food. So I kind of get the best of both worlds, if that makes sense.
I love that. And I think sometimes we put too much into like, oh, what are you going to do in the future? I mean, I think
Yes.
it's a great idea just to, like you said, just to, be in both worlds and really enjoy it. What a great place
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
okay, so I love to ask these questions at the end of the interview. Are you game?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about one favorite food of yours.
Oh, definitely cookies. A chocolate chip
Okay, good.
cookie. Yeah. Every time I will take a chocolate chip cookie over anything.
And chocolate chip is your favorite cookie?
Yes. Yes.
So let's dive down a little bit deeper, Jessica. So, I mean, is it just the a regular chocolate chip, or can you have peanut butter in it, or what's your favorite?
Oh, you can have
M&Ms?
oh yeah, I'll take it all. Really any cookie as long as there's some chocolate involved, I'm there, definitely.
Have you found? I know that you travel a lot, and
Yeah.
you do you write about your traveling on your blog?
Yeah, I do a little bit. Yeah.
And you have tested, I'm sure, a lot of chocolate chip cookies. Is there any place that you think makes the best chocolate chip cookie?
I have two favorite cookie places.
Okay.
One is Milk Bar, so Christina
Oh,
Tosi.
I've heard about that place.
Yes, I love her, big fan. And
Yeah.
the second was actually recently last year. I went to Paris for the first time and went to a reader actually recommended I go to a place called Scoop Me a Cookie, which is a weird name. And oh my goodness, they had the most amazing cookies. I tried three and they were just heavenly, like thick,
Wow.
chewy, a little bit warm, like the chocolate was all melty. Honestly, probably the best cookie I've ever had. So,
Wow. And
Yeah,
the name is in
Paris.
English, huh? You would think
Yeah.
that in Paris, they're kind of snobby about their French. So,
Yeah, I don't know if it's a chain, like, I don't know if they're anywhere else, but yeah, they were
oh,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, it sounds very good. I'm
Mhm.
with you. Like some people like their crispy cookies, but for me, a chocolate chip cookie needs to be kind of, gooey.
Yes, that's my favorite.
Yeah. Okay, tell me about if you have a favorite app on your phone.
Um, probably Instagram. I know everyone
Yeah,
says that. It's so
that's true.
annoying. Yeah. I laughed I laughed a little bit because I was gonna say the most used app on my phone is probably Instagram and Google Analytics because I'm always looking up my stats, but
Yes.
that's not really a fun app. That's a
No, but you're
work
the
app, I
second person
guess.
that said that to me this
Oh,
year.
really?
Google Analytics is their favorite app on their phone, and so it
There you
makes me think I'm gonna
go.
have to download it.
Yeah, it's so good and it's so easy and you can just touch base and see what's doing well, who's on there at the moment. It's just really nice. Yeah,
Do
really
you use
easy.
that to change anything? Like, what do you do if you go in there and you see, something's different than you want it to be?
Yeah, well, sometimes I'll see that a recipe is doing really well,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, then it can sometimes help me with recipe ideas, or maybe I need to go in and update that post because I see I'm getting a lot of traffic to it, and maybe it's a bit
Ah,
old or something like that. Um,
yes.
but it was really interesting for me over Christmas too because traffic tends to pick up around the holidays. And yeah, and just keeping an eye on what recipes are people actually looking at each day. It's very fascinating. You can get really lost in the numbers.
I know. And sometimes I think that's good, and sometimes I don't know if I think it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I know. I know. So,
Do you have any time for reading or TV at all? And if you do, what's your favorite?
yeah. I actually just finished reading Michelle Obama's new book.
Yes, I've got
Um,
that myself.
yeah, which I really enjoyed. I love biographies. Like I love hearing people's
Yes.
stories. So I really enjoyed that. Um, TV, I'm a little bit in a dead spot at the moment. I just rewatched Gilmore Girls on Netflix.
Ah, that's a great show.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Old favorite. Yeah, but otherwise, I'm up for any suggestions. But yeah.
We just finished watching Catastrophe. I don't know if you have Amazon Prime.
Oh no, I don't.
Oh my God. I'm not one of those people that laughs out loud at shows a lot. And Sean and I both were just cracking up. So for us
Oh,
both to
awesome.
laugh is pretty unusual. And
Yes.
oh my God, it's called Catastrophe and it's on Amazon Prime. It's really good.
Oh, cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah, but I loved Becoming as well because I felt like I just was really pleasantly surprised about how real she came out. She was just even the language which she used was just I thought it was really
Mm.
relatable.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Jessica, how can people find you online?
You can find me at sweetestmenu.com or on Instagram at sweetestmenu.
I love it, Jessica. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me. I had a wonderful time.
Me too. Thanks for having me, Marley.
Thanks to Jessica Holmes for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Be sure to sign up today for the Chopped Academy newsletter by going to chopped.academy and then scrolling down to the bottom of the page and clicking subscribe. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion with Jessica. If you're struggling with Instagram or juggling a full-time career with your career as a food blogger, I think today's discussion had so many nuggets of wisdom. I heard someone say recently that listening to this podcast is like sitting down to a cup of coffee or tea with me and my guest and feeling a part of the conversation. That's exactly what I'm going for, so I really love that that's actually what's coming across. Thanks to everyone for your support of the Chop Podcast. Your reviews on iTunes and Stitcher really makes a big difference. It takes only a few seconds of your time and it really means so much. If you felt inspired by today's discussion, take a snapshot of yourself listening or take a screenshot of your phone sharing the segment of the podcast that you're listening to. Share it with me using #ChoppedPodcast on Instagram. You inspire me, and I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.